This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so thank you everybody for joining us. I see some familiar names, maybe some new names as well. I'm Casey Judge with the Department of Planning and Development in the Zoning Administration Division. I'm joined with my partner, my co-lead, Carmen Bishop, and we're happy to be back for our third installment of ZMOD Lunch and Learns, this one being the home-based businesses as our topic. So we do have some slides for you. I'll go ahead and share my screen in a moment. If you are interested in starting a home-based business, or if you already have one, if you want to add that information in the comment box, that would be great so we can get to know our audience here, know who's on the call. And also throughout the presentation, please feel free to add comments into that comments box, questions you may have, and we'll get to those either verbally or writing a response into the comment box. We'll also have time at the end of the discussion for Q&A. All right. There we go. All right, so like I mentioned, this is our third Lunch and Learn installment. Thank you everybody for joining us. We're going to be highlighting home-based businesses. There were regulations that were amended by the Board of Supervisors, and really this new home-based business use was adopted as a part of the zoning ordinance modernization project. The board did make their decision to adopt the new ordinance on March 23rd, and it became effective on July 1st. We have been seeing some home-based business applications coming through the pike, so that's really good news. So we will go ahead, and today we're going to walk through what a home-based business is. Then we're going to walk through the standards as well, just to make sure that those are all understood and we can answer any questions that you all may have on those standards. So I will apologize in advance for the length of some of the words on these slides. We did want to make sure that we captured the exact wording of the standards and the definitions that are included in our ordinance. We will be posting this, so we might want to make sure the whole picture is there, but we won't be reading the slides. So really, this is the definition of what a home-based business is. I would say the main part is in that first sentence, which says that it's an occupation, profession, or trade that is conducted by a resident of the dwelling unit. So that is very important, and we also have a standard to this effect. The person operating this business does need to be a resident, and the business itself does need to be clearly incidental and subordinate to the residential purpose of the dwelling unit. So those are two really big takeaways. It is an accessory use, accessory to a residential use. We provide some examples in our definition, and then we also say what it's not. There are some other types of uses that don't fall under a home-based business. With the new ordinance, a new process was adopted. We have kind of a two-tiered approach. We have an administrative permit that was adopted. This replaces the previous home occupation permit, and there's a $100 fee for this administrative permit. We also have a special permit process that allows customers, and we'll go through when customers are allowed, when customers aren't allowed, which uses they're allowed with on some later slides. A special permit is also available to modify certain standards that we will highlight. One of the big changes with the new ordinance is that any permitted home-based business can apply for a special permit. Previously, it was limited to home professional offices, so these were different types of professional uses that had some sort of licensing requirement, or to barbershops or beauty parlors. So we have removed those designations and consolidated into the one home-based business uses and use-specific standards. The special permit here does come with a $435 application fee. So we'll dive on into the standards. The first standard, it kind of repeats just to really bring home the fact that the home-based business does have to be conducted to the person that the home-based business application permit is issued to, and it must be located within the dwelling that's their primary residence. So they do have to live there, or it can be in an accessory structure on the same property that's associated with the principal residence. The next standard tells us what is a home-based business, what kinds of uses can go into an accessory home-based business. So I'll walk through each of these. First, we have our general retail sales. There is a big caveat here that when you're doing retail sales, so customers can't come to the property even with special permit approval. So we have this clarifying language that the sale and the delivery of items does have to occur exclusively online or offsite. So you can operate that business from the home, but you can't have people coming to pick up the retail items. The next one is a small health and exercise facility. We often see those come through as like yoga or Pilates classes, some of those smaller type exercise uses. The next one is the repair of small household items. This can be musical instruments, sewing machines, radios, watches, those really smaller kind of, different items that we're not talking big deal kind of items here. So that is one of the uses that is permitted. Of course, office is permitted. That can be a consulting office, a doctor's office, anything that would fall under the office definition. Sewing and tailoring is permitted, and we do have clarification here that the barbershop or hair salon is going to require special permit approval. We do like to joke that it is kind of hard to virtually cut people's hair. So if you wanted customers, you are going to have to go through the special permit process. So that clarifying language is there. Music, photography, and art studios are permitted home-based businesses, as well as small-scale production. Now, this is similar to the retail sales. We do have the same caveat of the items being sold offline, or I'm sorry, online or offsite. The small-scale production is limited to items that are created on site. So think like jewelry or jewelry making, quilting. So we've got a lot of different types of applications that fall under the small-scale production, as well as the home-based food production. So cupcake making, different types of foods, those are considered a small-scale production use as well. And then last but not least, our specialized instruction center. This involves teaching of things that aren't falling under the health and exercise facility. So maybe like tutoring, teaching a language, any type of instructional activity. There's a little asterisk here that does clarify that there are other businesses from the home, such as a home daycare or Rover as well. We have these different types of businesses coming from the homes that don't require home-based business approval. Those types of uses are separately regulated. Some of them are separately defined, and they have their own specific use-specific standards as well. So the next slide deals with things on the outside, exterior evidence. So we do have a standard that requires the premise to have the exterior appearance of a dwelling. No exterior evidence is permitted, so no types of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example, like a clothes rack hanging outside or anything that would indicate that there is a business running from when you're looking in from the outside. There is a mention about no signs that are permitted. No signs are allowed except those that are already permitted with a residence, so with a dwelling. And there's a little asterisk there. It links you over to the signs regulations in Article 7. Yard signs are permitted with any residential dwelling. They are not permitted to exceed a cumulative total of 12 square feet, with no single sign exceeding 4 square feet in area or a height of 4 feet. So let's say you had, you could have up to 3 4-square-foot signs because that meets that 12 total cumulative square footage regulation. The fourth standard here does mention outdoor display and storage of goods or equipment or materials. You cannot have any outside display. It is not permitted. So we do really want to make sure that these home-based businesses are in keeping with the residential character of the neighborhood. In terms of size, we do have a new maximum total size for home-based businesses. So that all of the area that is used for the home-based businesses, and that does include your storage areas, is limited to a total of 400 feet. So let's say you have a home production use. If you're using the kitchen area is going to be included in that 400 square foot calculation. Same goes for an office. If you're in a little office area, you do need to count that towards your maximum size regulations.
All right, so moving on to standard number 6. So this is really a reminder. It's letting everyone know that just like with all other residences, there can only be one commercial vehicle, and those are defined, and that's kind of in that the blue asterisk at the bottom. A commercial vehicle does not include things like a food truck, a tow truck, anything over 21 feet in length, 8 feet in height, or 8.5 feet in width. So yes, you can park a commercial vehicle at your home, whether you have a home-based business or not, but it can't exceed those limitations. Now, for the home-based business, there are additional regulations on what kinds of vehicles you can have bringing things to and from your home for the purpose of your business. And so the standard says that it can't exceed 28 feet in length, and you can't use semi-trailers, tractor or trailer units. And so this would be a situation where, let's say someone has a floral shop that they're operating out of their home, and they have a vendor that brings the flowers every week, and that vendor is delivering the flowers in a semi-trailer. That would not be allowed. They're going to have to find a different vendor that does not use a semi-trailer to bring, because these are residences, and we are not looking to introduce large truck traffic into residential areas. All right, so for employees, what the adopted standards, they do pull back from what was allowed under the previous ordinance. So with this, only one non-resident employee is allowed with a single family detached dwelling with the administrative permit option. And then if you have your home-based business in a townhouse or an apartment, that administrative permit is not allowed to grant any non-resident employees. Now, when you do have those employees, for the single family detached dwelling, the hours are limited to 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then we'll get to the special permit standards in just a few more slides. But with a special permit, that's where the townhouse or the apartment could have some non-resident employees that would need to be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. And the Board of Zoning Appeals could also modify those work hours that are specified. So for customers and clients, what the board adopted is no customers are allowed with the administrative permit, except they did carry forward what was allowed under the previous ordinance, which is for instructional activities. And that's going to be associated with the health and exercise facility that Casey mentioned. So if you're teaching an exercise class or with the specialized instruction center, those are the two uses that encompass all of the things that you could possibly teach. So with teaching, you can have your 4 students at a time or 8 in a day. And then it does go on to say, though, if there's a home daycare facility established on the site, then there cannot be any customers or clients with a home-based business. So that part is new. And if there are customers or clients coming, a parking space, designated off-street parking space, does need to be made available for the customers or clients that are coming. Now, let's say you have a home-based business and you're not going to have any customers or clients, then there is no requirement to designate a parking space as available. So that parking space is really geared to those businesses that have the customer traffic. And customers or clients, they have a little extended hours because, of course, sometimes people might visit a home business after work or school time. So those are 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. So that's a little bit longer than what the employee is allowed to work. And then we'll get to those special permit standards in a minute again. But if any of those other uses that are not instructional activities want to have customers, they can apply for that special permit. And then if a special permit is approved, those hours of 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., they will still apply unless the BZA specifies different hours. And then if you do move, if you have a home-based business and you do move, you will need to get a new home-based business permit. It does not transfer. It's issued to that particular applicant for that particular location and that particular business. And so if the dwelling is served by a well or septic system, the review is going to be transmitted through our Plus system that we're going to be talking about in just a minute. It'll go to the health department, and they will need to review and approve prior to any administrative or special permit approval. Probably most of the time it'll be fine is what they said, but sometimes depending on what that business entails, they may require additional studies or documentation, and that process will need to be concluded before any home-based business permit can be issued. And then there's an additional standard that I'll just say right up front, it's pretty complicated. And if this might be an issue of concern, it's definitely one where we would consult the fire marshal's office for their expertise. But the standard says that a home-based business can't use, store, or generate flammable or combustible materials in an amount that would require a permit under Chapter 62 of the County Code. Chapter 62 has a pretty long table and it's pretty complicated. So like I said, if there's any question about flammable or combustible materials that could be part of a home-based business, we're going to need to consult with the fire marshal's office to see if this standard is being met. So on to those special permit standards. A home-based business, this is reminding you that they need to meet all of the standards that we talked about for the administrative permit. And it's like you need to meet all of those unless the BZA approves some modification. And the BZA is given the authority under this standard to allow outdoor activities. So this is a modification of the standard that says we want to see no exterior evidence. So this would allow outdoor activities, but only something such as a swimming lesson or a soccer lesson. So the BZA could approve that. The BZA can also approve a larger area than the 400 square feet. So anything more than 400 square feet, and as Casey said, that includes storage, that includes the whole area that you are conducting your business, all of it. So that can be approved. If you want more employees or different work hours. So if you're in a townhouse and you want to have even one employee, you would need that special permit approval. Or let's say you're in a single family detached and you only want one employee, but you want them to work longer hours than the 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. You would need that to be approved with a special permit. And then also, of course, those customers or clients. But this is a very different approach than the previous ordinance, because previously only like the home professional office or the barbershop or beauty parlor in the home, those were the only two that had even the opportunity to ask for customers or clients. And now you wouldn't need to be a professional office or cutting somebody's hair. All of those other types that we mentioned, except not the retail sales and not any kind of production. So if you're doing like that cupcake making, quilt making, or maybe you're selling things online, those, the BZA does not have the authority to permit customers or clients coming to the home. Those are just gonna, you'll have to either take things to them or mail it or some other way. So the BZA, when they're doing the review, instead of that requirement to designate the availability of one off-street parking space, whoops, that looked like fun though. Instead of the one off-street parking space being designated for customers or clients, any application for a home-based business that goes to the BZA, they are going to do an analysis and an evaluation of whether additional parking is required. And they may find that additional parking is needed or is not needed, but that is within that scope of review. And they will have to make that finding. A very important finding that they need to make is that the proposed business, together with other non-residential uses in the area, would not modify or disrupt the predominantly residential character of the area, because this is, after all, when we talk about a home-based business, home is that first word, and it, you know, that's an important consideration. And then lastly, standard 16 is just that reminder that the barbershop or hair salon that can only be with a special permit for the customers or clients, and that you're not allowed to have any nail, facial, or massage surfaces. So really just the hair cutting or other hair services, I guess. All right, so looking at our application process, everything is in Plus now. So if somebody is applying for a special permit, that is through the Plus site. What you're seeing is the Plus website that is for the administrative permit. So before you actually launch the Plus system and start, entering your name and so forth and applying, there's a helpful website for each of these different zoning applications, and it provides some background on what this use is, what are the standards, and then also importantly, how you can get help if you have questions about how to navigate that Plus website. All right, now I know you can't read anything on this slide, but I guess suffice it to say, there's a lot of information on the website, and so when you can read it, it's going to be really helpful. And things it'll tell you is that the processing time is about 14 days. The application fee for the administrative permit is $100. There's a reminder that you do need to comply with the requirements for your BPOL or your business, professional, and occupational license. There's also a link to a home-based food production supplemental form. This is something that the health department has developed, and it will ensure, that any home-based food production is properly documented and complies with health department regulations as well. There's also a link to a horseback riding lessons is what I'll shorthand it. It's what we call limited riding or boarding stable. So just like the home daycare is a separate defined use in the zoning ordinance, the limited riding or boarding stable is a separate defined use, and that's your horseback riding lessons that are conducted at a home. And there were just so many unique standards for that use that we didn't fold it into the home-based business use. We kept that as a separate use. But there's a link to that. So if somebody, finds their way to this site, then they'll see that and navigate to that other site. There's also a link to information about how to start a business in Fairfax County. Our Department of Economic Initiatives I think they might have a liaison, and we do want to be helpful for people who might have questions about starting a business. And then there's also a reminder of the things you need to get together before you start that application process. You will need to submit floor plans because that's going to document the size issue. You'll need photos of the interior and the exterior. For instance, if you need to show a parking space, we want to see a picture of that. There's always the ability with the Plus system to upload additional documents that you think may be helpful. We have, the standards are right there. They'll be in pop-down boxes. And then we have links to some other information, like we still have our summary page and our FAQs, and we'll keep updating the FAQs as new information might be relevant and so forth. And so with that, we are happy to answer questions. It's just catching up a little bit on the chat box, and it looks like maybe we don't have any outstanding questions in the chat box, but feel free to either enter a question in the chat box or unmute and ask your questions.
We do have oh, go ahead, Fran.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. Could you go over again how many home-based businesses can be in a house? I mean, you can have an accessory living unit. Can they have a home-based business? If you have a room rented, and can they have one and you have one? Where do you draw the line, and how do you figure that out?
Fran, that's a great question. And so there isn't a limit on, I could be a very enterprising person and I may have 3 or 4, businesses that I license to my home. But the standards would be cumulative. So the 400 square feet, I could have 15 different and I'm just, throwing, I'm just talking, so don't take that number to heart. But no matter how many businesses I may have, it doesn't matter if I work, personally all the time. I can't exceed the, the employees. So I'm in a single family detached home. And so it says I can have 1 non-resident employee. That means I get 1. I don't get 1 per business. It's 1 for this dwelling, for this lot. And the 400 square feet, that's going to be inclusive of everything. So it's going to require some record keeping on our part. Yeah, so the standards are cumulative, but there's no limit. There wasn't previously either. You can have however many businesses you want. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so what happens with the fact that my understanding is the plus system and all these things that are out there only go back to a certain date. So if somebody has a permit that is legitimate and all that sort of stuff, but was taken out maybe in the 1980s or something, it will not show up anywhere. So how do you keep track of that kind of stuff, and how do you make that person appear legitimate, because they're not going to show up on any of your sites and lists?
So any previous home occupation permit is permitted to continue under that approval. So they cannot take advantage of any of the new standards. They're still subject to the old provisions unless they come in and reapply for a home-based business permit. So that would be something that the 400 square feet, that's applying to new home-based business permits going forward. But the previous home occupation permit had different standards, like there was a standard that required, I think it was equipment customarily found in a home, that kind of thing. So there's different standards, and we have provisions related to previous approval that allow those to continue as long as they're not making any changes. I will note that the home occupation permits that were in our FIDO system have been converted, and they're also available in the Plus system now as well. So you can do a search in the Plus system and it'll have a little tab that says converted from FIDO. And so both those, the previous home occupation permits through 2008, as well as the new home-based business permits, are in that database.
Yes, so I was just going to say, I was looking up right as we started this to see how many home-based businesses are in Plus. And at first, when I did the search, over 9,000 came up, and I thought, oh wow, people have been really busy. But when I search on after July 1, I think it was something like 26 or something. But anyway.
Well, is there any way that you can put a disclaimer or something out there so that if somebody has a permit that was issued in 1980 or whatever, and it doesn't show up there, that they're not going to look like they're doing things against the rules? So in other words, could you say that permits that were issued prior to such and such a date may not be listed in the system? I mean, I'm concerned about giving people legitimacy, because they have done all the right stuff. But if somebody comes in and looks at them today, it looks like they don't have a permit. And that's concerning.
So the person is also, they can also provide a copy of their permit to us too. So that's
they
another
don't know
way.
that. They don't know that. So how
obviously, we are happy to work with people. So if there is a complaint that is filed, the applicant can provide the evidence that they received a permit prior to our online system.
Okay. So when the BZA does their evaluation to ensure that the neighborhood is not changing in character, How are they going to do that since they don't have the whole list of all the home-based businesses?
So the Board of Zoning Appeals, there's no maximum number of home-based businesses that can occur in a neighborhood. So they're really looking at it on a case-by-case basis to make sure that the proposed home-based business is not impacting the residential character of the neighborhood. I wouldn't say
They
it's a
don't know
cumulative,
what other businesses are on that street necessarily.
but their
Yes.
analysis is limited to this proposed home-based business. So they're looking at, is this proposed home-based business going to modify the residential character of the neighborhood?
Okay.
Not what are the other home-based businesses out there. It's not a cumulative impact sort of thing.
Okay.
But
Thank
I
you.
will note, I mean, it is a public hearing process, and you know, if there are neighborhood concerns, then there would be the opportunity to participate in that process. So I think you're right, Fran, that you know maybe the database isn't perfect, but with over 9,000 records, it's coming along, and every day as we move forward, you know, people may take advantage of you know submitting for the new permit. And some of those very old ones that were issued long ago, perhaps those businesses are no longer operating in any event. But if they are and a new case comes to the BZA, then you know they'll do their best to make that evaluation and make that finding, and taking into account testimony that is presented. I do see. Let's see. There was a question about can you speak on the requirement for the parking space? So the parking space, I don't know if you want to unmute and ask your question about it. It needs to be off street. So you're going to need to show that you have a space that you can reserve. It could be that maybe you're in a townhouse or a condo and you have a space that you can reserve for your customers to use. That's fine. Like maybe you have your own space and you're going to park your car somewhere else so that your customers can just pull in and out and use your reserved space. Or of course, if you have a driveway, you know, your customers can pull into your driveway. But did you have a different question about the parking?
No, you nailed it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We have a series of other questions in the chat as well. There's a question about why nails or facial were not allowed. And Carmen, help me jog my memory. Is that due to the potential products that were being used? There was a concern of the chemicals and what would be included in those products coming from the health department and the fire marshal's office. So we did want to make sure that those were excluded from being a home-based business.
Yeah, so the nails, as I recall, we consulted with Land Development Services, and mechanically, the
Yes.
ventilation systems in a home are not adequate to be operating a nail salon. And so that's not recommended for that health reason. The facials, I don't recall if it was a similar issue. And some of it, you know, I think quite frankly, it's carrying forward a bit from the previous ordinance that was very limiting on, like you couldn't do personal service with a home occupation. So, you know, we were taking kind of small steps and a cautious approach to allowing some of the personal service, but we really just wanted to keep it very limited. But the nails in particular, we did get that advice that that would not work with a regular home ventilation system.
Yes. And this is probably a good point to mention that massage is also not a permitted home-based business, and that's due to licensing restrictions. You cannot have a licensed massage establishment out of a home. So we obviously did not want to say you could do it from zoning perspective when it's not something that can actually be obtained. We had another question about confirming that the commonly found or the customarily found standard was removed. And yes, that is correct. We had a previous regulation that required equipment to that's customarily found in the home, limiting the equipment to those that is customarily found in the home. We have removed that. We found that determination to be quite difficult, as customarily found to one person maybe is not customarily found to another. So we have instead limited, you know, the uses, what's permitted, and added that size regulation, that 400 square foot size regulation, to get at the impacts.
While we're on the personal service question, Nancy, I see you asked about pedicures. Yeah, they're going to fall under the nails. So sorry, no home pedicures either. And then Nancy also had a question about small scale production, and she correctly notes that it is fairly open-ended. From a determination point of view, a lot of the ones we get questions about are the home food production, but it could be other things, but it needs to be something that you can make in your home, within 400 square feet. And you're going to need to do the on-site, online or off-site sales and delivery. So it'll need to work within all of the other standards. And then it also needs to meet that standard about Chapter 62. But within those confines, I think it is, as written, I think it is fairly open-ended as to what you could be making. And people are pretty creative sometimes about what they can make in their home. So I think you have a fair point there. We'll see how that goes.
I did have a question that came through privately, I believe, asking, is there a plan to have an application either pending or approved on a website? So you can search all home-based business applications on the Plus website currently, and it shows all of the different statuses from submitted through completed. You can search, I've been using the search function going to July 1st. Through the current day. That limits it to just the home-based businesses that have been submitted under the ZBOD regulations, and it will produce results on the home-based business applications that have been submitted, including pending and approved. There was a question about the length of the application process, and I see that Catherine did provide some responses on the process itself. And the process does depend on if all the information is provided or if there are follow-up questions that need to be asked by the technician. And then let's see, is there a guide for me to use for adding and deleting my, oops, it's going, hold on. My chat box keeps bumping up. Is there a guide for me to use for adding and deleting with my application already in the system? I believe that you'd have to submit a request to withdrawal to get it to be removed and voided from the system. Is that correct, Carmen?
Yeah, I don't know if you can remove documents, but I know that you can always add documents. That's one of the features with Plus that's always open. So even after you submit your application, you can go back and add documents. And that would be the same for Nancy asked about photos. It says you require photos of the property and the work area. Where is that stored? So that will be in the Plus system under the Documents tab. So yeah, it'll all be there. So like I said, I'm not sure if you can delete, but you can definitely add documents, and that will help you get through the process.
You can request the technician that's assigned that they can delete documents for you from the system. And like Carmen mentioned, you can always add documents as you see fit. Are there any other questions on the home-based businesses?
Will those documents be available to the public to see?
No, those are internal documents. So just the final, I'm not sure with what is posted with the home-based business, and I'm not sure, Catherine, if you have information on that. I know for our interpretations, just the final interpretation letter is uploaded and available to the public. So I'm not sure what the final product is that is available once we do approve the home-based business.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Casey, obviously we're not going to, there is stuff about the floor plan of people's homes, and there's.
Catherine, you're a little muted, not muted, muffled. Can you try that one more time?
Sure. If it doesn't work, I'll type it in the chat box. Can you hear me better?
Sure. Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. So it's, I believe, and I would have to confirm, but I'm 99% certain it's just the permit itself. I mean, obviously,
Okay.
we have floor plan information. We're not going to release private information about people's homes. So in order to protect everyone, I believe it is just the permit itself.
Thank you. Thank you for weighing in. And yes, the home-based business permits will be in plus. Wow, I just combined FIDO and plus. They will be in plus, no longer in FIDO. I know we're getting close to our 45-minute mark. We want to make sure you guys do have some time to get something to eat before going back to work or whatever you may be doing. But please, if you do have any other questions that come up, feel free to reach out to me and Carmen Bishop. You can also feel free to reach out to technicians, to planners of the days. We're all here to help you, and happy to answer any questions that you may have over time.
And I just want to mention we're going to take a little break during the month of August, but then we do have a couple more lunch and learn scheduled in September, I believe it is, and then we can also schedule more. We still have our ZMod outreach page up where we will include information about additional presentations that are available. If you have questions, we know that it's a new zoning ordinance and everything new has a learning curve. So please feel free to reach out to me and Casey, or really our planner of the day. Everyone is, getting trained up and able to answer questions. So really, please feel free to reach out as you work through new questions.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good Wednesday.
Thanks. Bye.